without further ado, I want to bring up our dear friend and partner, Bill Wordy, editor of Billboard. He'll introduce the panel. Have a great time, everyone. We'll see you throughout the week.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing today? Everybody good? Ready to see some of the best artists working today talk about their craft? I got to tell you something. It's a real pleasure to be able to present this group of folks. You know, when you're talking about Spike Lee, when you're talking about John Legend, and when you're talking about Questlove, you're talking about three guys that are some of the most true artists out there. Folks that kind of wear how they feel on their sleeve and they put it into their art. Again and again and again. I don't think there's anything contrived about these folks, and from the conversation I just had in the green room, I can assure you that that is the case. I think that this being advertising week, you know, it's worth noting that American Express has launched, from where I sit, one of the more interesting music programs of the year in their Unstaged series. They're getting some of the best, most important artists working today to do a live show. They're getting some of the top directors in history, when you look at guys like Terry Gilliam or Spike Lee, to kind of capture those moments in a very real way. And they're kind of doing it in a way that makes sense for their business. There's a lot, when you're coming at it from Billboard's perspective, there's a lot that's said and a lot that's written about the connection between branding and music and how you can use music to reach people and all these different things, but there are probably 20 times for every one time. There's probably 20 times where it doesn't work for every one time where it really does. And for my money, this is one where it is working phenomenally. Just out of curiosity, show of hands, how many people actually saw, either through Vivo or YouTube or actually at the concert, how many people saw the John Legend Roots show, the Unstaged performance the other day? So a good amount? Okay. Not a good enough amount. So I want to correct that right now. And cue a little clip so you can understand, we can bring it back to the music, and you can kind of see what these folks are creating, all of them. Please.
This song was written by Bill Withers back in the early 1970s. I can't write left-handed. Would you please write a letter to my mother? Oh, yeah. Strange little man over here in Vietnam. I ain't never seen, bless his heart, I ain't never done nothing to. He done shot me in my soul.
That was just one moment of a whole series of amazing moments that night. And I got to tell you, as someone who goes to an awful lot of shows, it's rare to get a show that has those kinds of moments again and again and again. And it's even more rare to have a director capture it on film in a way that actually lets you kind of feel like you're part of it. I want to bring to the stage Courtney Kelso from American Express, Joe Killian from Momentum, the agency that helped put this together, and of course, Spike Lee, Questlove, and John Legend. People always sit as far away from the journalist as possible.
Yeah.
Just kidding. So, you know, this being advertising week, I want to kind of start with understanding a little bit about what Unstaged is broadly. Kind of what are the components of it? Let's start there.
So American Express Unstaged is really the notion of a curated live streaming concert series. We bring together some of today's most relevant musicians. We pair them with film's greatest directors, frankly, and we stream them in HD to millions of people across the world, you know, in many, many different countries. We work to really sort of bridge that divide between the live concert experience to one that you can enjoy when you're in your pajamas at home. Through pretty interesting digital and social media innovations. And frankly, you know, through our partnership both with YouTube and with Vivo, we're really proud to be the brand that brings this to the world. We've had some incredible success. We've started back in December with Alicia Keys, really as a way to reach millions and millions of music avids and concert lovers. And we did a wonderful stream with Alicia Keys back in December with a special guest, Jay-Z. And frankly, it blew us away with the scale, the reach. We were able to reach millions of people around the world. And frankly, with what it did for our brand, we're really reaching out to a different generation, a younger generation, trying to be more relevant to that generation.
So when you look at a series like this, how do you judge it? Like, sort of, what are your specific goals, and how are you measuring that? How are you measuring your success against these things?
Well, we have several different things that we look at. We look at certainly awareness metrics, so the reach and the scale, and how can we actually get as many views and interactions with this incredible product, we think, with incredible artists. We look at views. We look at engagement with the stream, how many minutes they stay engaged, and the numbers are striking. We look at click-through rates for the media that we've placed as a very strong indication of the interest in these musicians and in the film directors. We look at brand favorability. We do all kinds of studies to determine net promoter score, intent to recommend, application intent.
How did John do?
This, as you were seeing some footage just off of the presses, we know that this is going to be absolutely out of this world in terms of what we've seen before and with the level of engagement we have through the audience.
Yeah, I'm no hype man. I got to be honest. That was one of the better shows I've seen in a couple years. That was an amazing kind of night of music. So I would imagine that your brand must be pretty ecstatic to be attached to something like that.
We're very ecstatic to be really bringing this this sort of new and different way to stream music online. I mean, we try and make it the highest quality, only as befitting of someone like American Express and frankly these artists. And then it's all about them and how amazing they are able to connect back with their live audiences and the online audiences. Frankly, you know, I've been there at all of the shows, but then have caught the rebroadcast, and it's incredible the ways that you're able to, as an online audience, impact the show. So you can choose from different camera angles, choose to view it the way you'd like to view it. You can tweet the band. You can vote for a song. You can actually interact and impact the stream as it's happening. So we're really trying to bridge that divide and bring that really special experience home to people in their homes.
Okay, cool. And Joe, just a quick question for you. I mean, from an agency perspective, I'm sure you're setting up sort of interesting products and programs all the time. How does this one fit into context? What's unique? What's kind of working about this one in a different sort of way?
Well, I think what is truly unique is the stellar artists. And if you didn't see the show, it's online, see it. But as Bill said, it was an extraordinary show, and I was saying backstage, you go to so many shows and they're good shows, sometimes a great show, but rarely are they filmed, and rarely are they filmed by a great director who understands music. And I'm like, as an agency, to be able to select artists and get the artists engaged to really say, what director would you like to work with? And in this case, you know, John was quick to say Spike. To be able to make that marriage happen is pretty exciting, pretty rare, because it's very unique content and really it raises the level of the show, the music, the guests, and truly make it for the brand a one-of-a-kind experience that can't be duplicated anywhere else.
All right, I'm going to come back to the business of this in a few minutes, but I want to kind of get into the creative part of this a little bit. You know, all of this kind of centers around this amazing album release, this album Wake Up that John and the Roots have released together. You know, it's for those of you that aren't aware of it, you will thank me later if you kind of go out and check it out. It's an album of largely, I think there's one new song on it, but it's mostly an album of covers, and it's an album of covers of more or less obscure late 60s, early 70s songs that kind of are, you know, very politically conscious, very aware. John and Amir, how did, from your perspective, tell me a little bit about the project and, like, you know, what it came from and what you want to do with it, and then even maybe we can talk a little bit about how American Express is helping that. But yeah, just from a creative perspective, how'd the project happen?
Well, the seed of the idea was in 2008, as people might remember 2 years ago. It was kind of heady times in America, and you know, I reminisce about that now. But,
Seems like a long time ago, right?
It's so long ago. No, but it was an interesting time. It was an exciting time. We were all campaigning. We were all involved in this historic election. A lot of young people were voting for the first time. A lot of people were engaged for the first time. And musically, it just felt like we should do something to respond to that. And so we thought about, well, another period of time where, you know, there was similar amounts of kind of upheaval and frustration and youth involvement. And it was during the late 60s and early 70s, the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the women's rights, all these things were happening in this country, and it was a contentious, you know, time, but it was also a hopeful time, an optimistic time, and that, I think, that brew of emotions made for some really exciting and interesting music that, as a soul music fan and as a soul music kind of descendant, has always been something that inspired me anyway. And so we thought we should make some music like that. We should, you know, go back to that moment and try to uncover it and rediscover it for a new generation. That's what this album is. And when we were thinking about doing it, the first collaboration we thought of was, let's do it with the Roots. One of the best bands in the world, Amir, this guy right here, being one of the great music historians and aficionados that I know, and particularly when you're thinking about doing a cover album, you want someone.
I paid him to say that.
You want someone who has, you know.
Actually, I think American Express paid him to say that.
Has some real perspective on you know, some historically great songs that may have been overlooked, and we were able to put this project together, and we started out back in 2008 maybe thinking it was going to be an EP, maybe like a digital thing, just kind of a viral thing. But then the more we got into it, we said, let's let this thing be big, let this be released like a real album would be released, like any other priority at the label. And I was fortunate that my label and my management were very much into the idea, because if you know, kind of think about it in the abstract, there are probably a lot of labels that would have said,
Hell no.
This is not a good idea, man. You know, this is not what's popping in the streets right now. So, you know, so we did it anyway, and everybody on my team was really behind it. And it really, you know, I think it's a testament to, if you go out there and try to make something that's really artistically astute, something that's really necessary and that people want to hear, then there's a way to get it out there. It might not be the traditional way, but you can get it out there and it can sell.
That's right. I mean, it's not, you know, the song's not blowing up the traditional like R&B or hip hop radio stations or at all like that,
Right.
but it is heading towards a pretty high debut on the Billboard charts this week.
Yeah,
so you are getting it out there. People
And
are
I think
responding.
the word of mouth is great, and frankly we've had a great marketing campaign. We've had a great team. This Amex thing helped a lot, but the label's done a lot. And you just have to think differently when it comes to marketing this kind of album. And radio is not the end all be all of how you market an album.
Thinking out of the box is almost very imperative for a project like this.
So in this case, tell me a little bit about what went on outside the box from your perspective.
I guess, well, you know, we started with the songs first, and I guess when he approached me with the idea, the first list that I made was the list of songs that I didn't want him to do.
Right.
Well,
do not
you know,
play
'cause
list.
it could have been. I could have easily led him to the lion's den to get slaughtered, because of course, when you talk about covering someone's material that, you know, people hold near and dear, you run the risk of just instant criticism.
Yeah.
So I thought it was more important to find the song with the message, and on top of that, because of both of our experiences with the Obama campaign in 2008, you know, I mean, there were various emotions in the air. You know, some days it would just be inspiring where you'd want to cry, and some days you just feel like we took 12 steps back. You know, just on what I've saw myself as far as the campaign was concerned. I mean, I saw every spectrum of, you know, people's emotions, a lot of anger, a lot of fear, and a lot of, you know, jubilant, you know, it was just, and I wanted to capture that. I just didn't want him to be like, okay, well, let's choose a Stevie Wonder song. Let's ignore that ringtone. No.
I'm sure it's a very important
on
phone
my
call.
set, you owe me $50 right now. The camera's rolling. That's $50.
No, but
To me.
no. So I think basically I wanted to find songs that could really capture, and honestly, what's going on in America. You know, I mean, it would have been real easy to do, you know, A Change Is Gonna Come by
Yeah.
Sam Cooke and a Stevie Wonder song.
The Marvin Gaye song.
Yeah, and even though, like, we chose some artists of that caliber, you know, we chose a lot of their obscure songs that had just as strong messages in them. So that way that you could give this project a chance and not just judge it on, okay, let me judge it on the song that I've lived with all my life. So,
Yeah, I mean, you unearthed some gems. I mean, people may not know this, but you have like 60, 70,000 pieces
Yeah.
of vinyl. I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of know what you're talking about when it comes to finding a song or two.
I'm a music snob, as,
Yeah.
as you can say. I'm proud of that.
But you picked some great songs because it's not what you would expect. And frankly, for most people, I think that if you didn't tell them it was a covers album, because these songs are generally
90% of the
underexposed.
people that I played it for back, you know, when I would have litmus tests, I wouldn't even tell them it's a cover record.
Yeah.
You know?
One thing I want to ask as a little bit of a music fan, and then I have some questions I want to get Spike involved. One of the things I want to ask as a music fan is, you know, John, you have this like almost perfect kind of crooner's voice for a lot of the stuff that you've done. And this material, it feels to me like listening to this album and watching your show, feels to me like this material may have pushed you a little bit more.
Well, it's funny because
That was my dream for him, to
Yeah.
pick the worst take of all
Yeah,
the takes.
it's funny because it's really just getting back in touch with how I grew up singing, because I grew up singing in church, and you know, it wasn't about being smooth and crooning and, you know, romantic. It was about
Wearing it
catching the
out.
spirit
Yeah.
and bringing the house down at church. And so this is my first singing style. Like, what I'm singing on this album is how I grew up singing. And so it came very naturally to me to do it this way. And it was very liberating doing it in the context of this album. I think because we came into it knowing, you know, this is not going to be a radio project. We're not trying to compete with Usher or Gaga or, you know, this
I
is.
hope not.
We're not even trying to play on that field. let's just make a great album. And it's very liberating because you don't have to worry about, you know, am I singing too soulfully for, you know, mainstream radio? You could just go out there and just give the performance of your life and just enjoy it and really be in the moment and really live that music to the fullest.
Yeah, it really, yeah, it started out as a labor of love more than anything. And so without all the pretension or even just the pressure of, because, you know, most of black music that I know of, it's more the key to survival. Like, I must have this hit in order to keep my record deal, in order to pay my bills. And that's why you always get all these diminished returns, at least spiritually, from music. That's why most of the music today doesn't really bring you to that place where it brought you years ago, simply because you know, the pop marketplace really doesn't call for any type of enlightening whatsoever. It's almost the opposite effect. If you try and enlighten someone, you're basically just turning them off.
That's really pretty sad and pathetic.
Well, people want to escape their reality.
I wasn't being funny, actually.
I mean, I understand why. You know,
Yeah.
if
Well,
you look at the times that you're in, yeah, maybe a pop song will take your mind off of what troubles you're going through for, you know, 5 minutes.
But there's good pop songs and bad pop songs
Clearly.
too, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're all sort of subjective, and, you know. I'm not naming names. I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
You can name names if you want
Because only because I'm so immersed in the game on both sides. Like, I kind of got to be bipartisan to it. Because as a DJ, like, as you know, I have I have a lot of computers, but for my music computers, I have a computer that is my personal, you know, what I want to hear first thing in the morning while I'm getting dressed. And then, you know, the exact opposite of that is what I need to DJ at
Fill in the blank club.
someone's wedding or
Yeah.
something like that. So it's like,
You do weddings?
yeah, you know,
For the right price,
and bar
my friend.
mitzvahs.
That's good. That's the new music business, folks.
I did Nick Jones's wedding. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a wedding DJ.
I wish I knew that in 2004.
Nick
too late.
Jonas.
Yeah, I did his wedding.
I want to come back to that in just a second. This notion of what is out there.
I don't know.
But, you know, Spike, one of the things, it was amazing to me watching this show. I was up on one of the balconies, and for those of you that haven't seen it, and this wasn't part of what you just saw, you know, the band, John and the Roots and some other folks, they kind of came in, and it was like a full-on, almost like a second line parade, like New Orleans style. People came in, you guys came in off the street, in the back of the club, straight up the middle, and took the stage. And it was like, okay, this is going to be a party. And then right in the front of this kind of parade of people was Spike Lee with a camera, kind of walking backwards really fast.
I didn't have the camera, but
So
I was holding the guy that was holding the camera.
yeah. You know, I want to say that it really is. I mean, I love concert movies. You know, I think like The Last Waltz, for example. I mean, not only do I love
Martin
movies,
Scorsese.
not only do you love the movie, but I mean, you could watch it. There's an hour video somewhere of Martin Scorsese talking about the difficulties of shooting this concert and turning it into something bigger than just, you know, a record of the concert, but actually kind of getting something out of it. You caught some moments there, and you did it in a way that pays justice to those moments, which is pretty remarkable and fortunate for all of us. Tell me a little bit about the challenges of shooting a concert show, and tell me a little bit, if you would, even just about how you came to be involved and what your thoughts were with what you could do with it.
Well, my man right here called me up,
Yeah.
and I said I'm in. So I want to thank you, Joe, and American Express, and John and Amir for letting me be part of it. I'm, you know, big fans of your work from way back, and so really it's my job as a filmmaker to serve the artists and the materials. And so I called my ace director of photography, Malik Saeed, who shot several films for me and commercials and stuff. And so we just wanted to try to provide the cinematic equivalent to what the music is. And so we did not have a lot of time. Had one rehearsal the night before, but we were given the tools to do what we needed to do. It was, I had done some live stuff before. I did 2 live shows with Pavarotti in Italy. He had this benefit concert he always gave, and I did that, and I had done John Leguizamo's show, Freak, as a live thing, and also we did the play Passing Strange, so I had done some live things. So it's just a matter of trying to put the camera in places where you usually can't get a camera and give the audiences a different viewpoint. And so we were very happy with the way it turned out. It was a monumental show, and it's captured forever. So we're happy about that.
You know, Spike, there seemed to be something about the way you shot it that had a musicality to it, because there are some of the songs, you were truly inside the music.
Well, I grew up in a jazz household. My father's a great jazz bassist. Bill Lee's done a lot of scores for my films, and from early on, he was taking me to Newport Jazz Fest. My father played for, it was at the time, it was the folk bassist of Bob Dylan, Gordon Lightfoot, Peter, Paul and Mary, Judy Collins, Odetta, Josh Bibbs, and then he was on the jazz thing. He was dragging me to the Village Vanguard and the Bitter End. So I just grew up in a household of music. I was not, he wanted me to be a musician, but I kind of rebelled, so I was the eldest. And so, but it still did not curtail my love of music, so I'm able to use that love of music in my films. So, you know, and also I think a great example, as you mentioned, Martin Scorsese. He's probably the best director I know who really married the imagery with music. So I've learned a lot from him too.
Cool. You know, you talked about initially making this album at a time in America when, you know, sentiment was maybe in one place, and now here we are 2 years later, and in terms of that sentiment, it feels like maybe it's 8 years later, and that's tough. Does part of you wish that you kind of did get this out as like a fast EP, or,
No.
or do you feel like it's, you know,
It actually feels more relevant now.
It's even more relevant now.
people
thing
are
is-
not less angry, it turns out.
Even then, there was a lot of anger. This whole Tea Party thing, there was a lot of that. You could see all of that in some of the McCain and Palin rallies.
Yeah.
A lot of the same rhetoric, a lot of the same nasty imagery, and some of the signs that you saw. Those were all there. They just happened to be 48% instead of 52%.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a small percentage though. Not that all of the 48 was Tea Party, but they were part of that team. So like there was a lot of that anger then, and there was a lot of the kind of the fights over what it means to be real American, which is very very thinly veiled racism. That was all part of the conversation back then about his religion, about his citizenship, about whether or not his supporters were real Americans, because real Americans only come from small towns and
Right.
etc. Like these are all things that were said.
I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny. But
They were all things that were said during the campaign.
yeah.
And now it's even worse because the recession's gotten worse. People are more frustrated. People are more angry, and it's real out there. And we tried to make an album. We didn't want the whole album to be kind of hold hands and kumbaya.
We the world.
We are the world. We wanted it to reflect, frustration and anger and people who feel like maybe things might not get better.
Yeah.
Or it's going to take some work for it to get better.
So there's a balance in a lot of the subjects of the song selection we made. I mean, we're scrutinizing and just as far as very careful to not choose songs that said the same thing. One song, Wake Up Everybody, pretty much, captures in 4 verses the education, the healthcare system,
The environment.
the ecology, like
Education.
yeah, all that in one song. Whereas a song like "Hang On In There," it took me a while to try and find a song that dealt with how black people felt about not being considered an American, because a lot of that was going on, like the whole thing of real Americans, and like these are things that we learned on the campaign trail, like Campaign and Forum.
He was calling.
I would call people and they wouldn't know that I was a black person. So they would just tell me what their true feelings were.
Yeah.
And so
It's
that is
even
what I
uglier
was
than
getting from.
awesome.
It's even uglier than what you see in the press.
Yeah. So I mean, that was what I was getting from.
You were kind of undercover.
That was my wake up call. Yeah.
I love that.
Where we were as a country, and I'm kind of glad. I knew that he wanted to come out in 2008. And I'm really glad we did it. Sort of delayed a little bit, only because I knew. I kind of called. Well, Obama called this too, but we kind of knew that the honeymoon would be over after a while, and then and then the numbers would go down in popularity. So that's why I didn't kind of want to set him up with the Victory Lap, the album by John Legend.
Right.
Victory lap.
And then it would kind of be in that moment.
That's a new title.
Right.
The Victory lap.
And I think one of the most important things that hopefully could come out from this album that is apropos with the title, Wake Up. And so this is not just necessarily for the audience or the record listeners, but maybe to artists. Because if you look, Stevie Wonder, Nina Simone, Marvin Gaye, there's many others. These were artists who did not feel that they were going to risk their career, and they spoke about things that were happening in the world. And there are a lot of artists today who are not going to even touch this subject matter with a 10-foot pole for fear that
they'll lose their career.
They'll lose their
I
career.
always bring up the Natalie Mines Dixie
Chicks
situation. They spoke their minds, and then America spoke back and, told them how they felt about their opinions. And I think like a lot of artists took cues from that.
Yeah, this was something I wanted to actually arrive at, and it's actually interesting because from a brand perspective, there's some risks around this too a little bit, or some opportunities. Yeah. But
it's kind of risky for Amex.
That's what I was gonna say.
Frankly.
Can we get it for?
Let's hear from
Thank you.
Yeah, no, for real.
I know there were some discussions.
I think, given the struggles in the music business that are pretty well documented, there is an extent to which we're kind of moving towards almost like a patron society in music, where the brands really become the power that enables some of these things to happen. Mm-hmm. With that, of course, comes if a brand decides, you know what, I don't really want to dip my toe in that water. There can be, now in this case, clearly American Express had the courage and the fortitude, or saw the opportunity to do that. Tell me a little bit about that from the brand perspective. Is it something that you consider?
Absolutely, we have to. We're a 160-year-old brand, really with a heritage and a legacy of service and serving communities and serving our card members. And frankly, I have to be careful not to put anything out there that's going to offend lots of people. Other than that, it's about the craft. It's about the music. It's about providing experiences to our card members and to music enthusiasts. And we're just the conduit for that to get out there. We're careful that in the ways that we have to be, but we're absolutely not here to censor anything in any way. And we're very proud to be working with all of these gentlemen on stage.
Very cool.
Bill, the other thing I'd say that we haven't touched on is every one of the streams that we've done to date have had a charitable element. In this case, John Show Me campaign is part of Members Project. With Arcade Fire, it was the Partners in Health in Haiti. With Alicia, it was her charity, Keep a Child Alive, helping out in Africa. And with The National, it was Red Hot. So we look for great art, we look for great directors, but we also look for artists who have a charity, a give-back philosophy, if you will. And that's a key component of these.
Yeah, I'd say that, we would almost be remiss if we're able to touch millions of people all over the world. We have to bring some of these charities to the forefront and frankly, work with the artists to make a difference. And so that's a key part of each one of these that we're doing. It's an important part of it.
Courtney and Joe, you guys have been working with the music industry for a long time. How has the last few years, with sort of the sales part of the music business on a little bit of a slide, how has the last few years changed the dynamic of the conversations that brands can have with music? How has it changed for you guys or broadly?
I think there's and Joe, I'll let you jump in here as well. I think there's certainly a lot more parties to speak with. We work with artists, we work with management, we work with live touring companies because the product that people are really paying for is to see their favorite artists live and in concert. Yep. Frankly, for us, we really believe in the craft and the music, so the closer we can work with the artists to achieve their objectives, frankly, is pretty important to us. And that's why one of the key pieces of this program is to time any of these streams with the release of an album so that we're working together to get the music out.
I should ask you, and I mean this in broad terms, I'm not asking you to disclose any kind of NDA level insight, but what is the relationship, what is the financial relationship between American Express and then the bands that are at the center of these things?
Well, we don't like to disclose a lot, but frankly, sure. If I can be, it's
just you, me, and our best friends.
It's a partnership.
Yeah.
It really is a partnership. A lot of brands come to the table. They pay a lot of money to slap their logo on something, and really they're an advertiser at that point. I mean, it works for some people. We come together with artists, with management, with all of the people involved, and we like to actually contribute what we can, and what we really contribute financially is that which makes it that much better. It's production, and it's all of the elements that make it so high quality.
Yeah, I'd say, especially as the record business has changed, we're there to provide a marketing tool and a set of assets that really market the artist, the show, the director. Because
maybe the labels don't have the budget so much anymore for marketing the way they should, especially on a project like this that needs some kind of different marketing.
They're the replacement for the label in a lot of ways now. These partnerships, they replace the label because the marketing spend just isn't there anymore. This is the marketing spend,
Yep.
And I have to say, not to be kissing ass, but this was very well done by MX, and the partnership was very respectful of the art. It was very well executed on every level.
Yeah.
It was like textbook. If you want to have a relationship between a brand and a musical entity that preserves and enhances the integrity of the musical entity and also is a home run on the marketing side, this was a textbook example to me.
Wow. All right, I think we're going to be running out of time in just a few minutes. Is there a way, I don't know if anyone in the audience have some questions? And is there a way, I don't know if we have mics or you got mics floating around? So we got a question right here in the middle.
I'm good, kind of loud.
Question from a loud person.
Well, let me look at the room again. How many people actually knew about the live stream?
How many people knew about the live stream was the question.
How many people actually watched it again?
Now, how many people are going to go and watch it on demand right after this? Yeah, I like that.
How many people are going to come to the advertising opening night party that Billboard's throwing tonight where you can actually hear the music? Billboard and Vivo are partnering on a night tonight, and we got.
That was actually pretty good because I find a lot of times with branded entertainment in general across the board, with advertisers, they like to be a part of these things to say that they've done it, but they don't really get it to the consumer. It's just something to build them up and say, well, we did this, but it doesn't really serve its purpose. So that was actually a very good job.
This wasn't the case, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let the panel speak to that, but that ultimately, that's what I said. That ultimately doesn't behoove the brand or anyone else involved. So if you guys,
it was a very good job. So with that being said, what were the specifics as far as your distribution model, whether that be social mode, because you kind of said it in a roundabout way, but what were some of the specific things that you got into to make this work?
So we did everything from centered online advertising, online media buys. We did a lot of sort of outreach to the music industry, and we actually got quite a lot of impressions just from earned media from a PR standpoint. We did a lot with our Twitter followers, and frankly with your Twitter followers as well. These guys were true partners in that sense, and that they really helped get the word out through our Twitter followings, our Facebook followings. We leveraged everything that we have sort of in our stable. This means a lot to us, and the more people we're able to touch, the better. Preliminary results are back. We reached many people, millions of people the night of, and we think that there's still 30 more days of having this really high quality content available, and so I think that media campaign is going to continue to extend. But frankly, a lot of it is word of mouth. As I feel like there's a groundswell towards this platform, Unstaged, and we hope that it will continue. Frankly, we also get a lot of artists have called us wanting to be a part of this. So I think that people recognize, and the music industry recognizes, when hopefully we come at it very authentically, and we want to be a good partner to the creative element and to the craft itself. And I think we're hoping it's the groundswell is really going to build.
Yeah, see.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to actually, because we are running out of time, so I'm going to get to a couple other folks. Let me take one question from up here. John, what do you think is the most important marketing outlet for you in terms of what you've seen work with hitting people? Social media, mobile, that kind of thing. What platforms are working for you?
Most important. Well, for this album, I would say generally speaking, radio is still, I think, if you have a hit on the radio, you're probably going to sell a certain amount of records. Yeah. And if you don't, it's harder to sell that much. So I think radio is still, in general, in the music business, the gatekeeper. If you have a #1 radio record, then you are likely to sell a lot of downloads of that record. You're likely to sell more copies of your album than you would if you didn't. And that's true. But I would say that for this kind of album, which certainly wasn't leaning on radio, you have to convince people. Well, first of all, make sure people know that it's out there, and then convince people that it's something worth buying into. And I think we've used a lot of social media, a lot of digital releases of things. So one thing we did, which I thought was really important, was we made basically kind of music videos of us performing live in the studio of almost every song on the album. And we kind of every week did a release of one of the songs from the album, just to get people excited about the collaboration. And you sell your strengths. And I think anyone who knows me and knows the Roots know that as much as we're good at making records, we're very good at doing live shows. So we've really emphasized the performance element. Yeah. And so other artists aren't going to be that good at performing live, but we know we were good at it, and part of the selling point for this album would be how good we were at performing it live. And so we have provided a lot of ways for people to access that material, get them excited about the project.
Very cool. Maybe time for one more question from the audience. Got a hand right here.
Yeah, my 2-year-old son loves the Yo Gabba Gabba show. That the Roots are involved with.
He said his 2-year-old son loves the Yo Gabba Gabba show that the Roots are involved with.
And Pharrell just scored the Despicable Me movie, and a lot of artists are doing original music for commercials. What do you think about the aspect of now today? It's cool to do that. To where years ago it would be seen as selling out. It's more like selling in.
The Yo Gabba thing was so unique, being as though I'm a big kid myself, And really, Yo Gabba is even though it's presented as a kid's show, after doing so many concerts, it's really more for the parents than the kids. I grew up on PBS and Electric Company and all that Sid and Marty Krofft stuff, and it looks like one giant acid trip for kids, really. So when they approached me, it was basically just them approaching my inner 9-year-old that wanted to watch the Electric Company and be a part of that. So.
Remember HR Puff and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff was like acid trips.
All right, sadly, we are out of time. So hopefully I'll see a bunch of you tonight at the Billboard and Vivo party with John Legend and the Roots. I want to thank the panelists for an amazing discussion and some great art. Thank you all very much.